Hey everyone, I'm Nadine and I design and run Rebel Knits, which is a slow fashion knitwear brand. And today we're going to show you how to weave in ends properly. Finishing a knit piece isn't just about binding off, it's about taking care of the little details like weaving in your ends so your work looks clean and lasts through the real wear. Now, in this segment, we're going to tuck those yarn tails into the fabric, following the path of your stitches so they disappear into the knit and stay secure over time. So, let's jump right in and weave at those ends.
Once you've bound off and tightened that last stitch, it's time to weave in your ends so everything looks clean and stays secure. Once your pieces are joined, you'll have a cast on or cast off tail sitting right at the edge of the seam. Turn your work so the wrong side of the 2x2 rib is facing you. Thread the tail onto a tapestry needle. This yarn is a little thick for this needle, but that's okay. You can gently squeeze it through the eye and it will still work. Once it's threaded, we'll start weaving the end on the wrong or back side of the garment. First, I'm showing you what not to do. If you run the needle right along the top of your work, the yarn will show on the outside of the piece. I don't recommend this. You always want to hide your ends underneath your stitches or inside the seam as much as possible. At Revell Knits, we weave in our ends so they're seamless on the garments. This is one way to do that. Now I'm tucking the needle under the cast-on edge instead of on top of it. As soon as I do that, the tail disappears and the edge looks seamless. Notice how I keep pointing out where the top of the fabric is, and then deliberately slide the needle just below that area. You don't want to pierce all the way through to the front. You're aiming to travel inside the seam so the cast-on edge stays completely undisturbed. This is the kind of finish you want when you're building luxury garments. One thing you want to avoid is ladders, those long, obvious jumps of yarn you can see here. You get them when you skip too far between insertion points or don't follow the natural path of the fabric. If you spot a ladder, just back the needle out and try again with shorter, more frequent steps that stay close to the existing stitches. When I reweave this end, you'll see it becomes practically undetectable. Continue weaving like this for about 5 to 8 small steps. In the sample, I take the tail all the way to the end of the seam. When you look back at it, it should be hard to tell where the end even is. When you inspect your work, you're checking for exactly that. No visible ladders, no distortion, and no change to the original seam or design. FAQ 1. How long should my yarn tail be for weaving in? For most projects, aim for a tail that's about 15 to 20 centimeters, or about 6 to 8 inches. That gives you enough length to follow the stitch pattern and change direction a couple of times so the end stays secure, without wasting a lot of yarn. FAQ 2. Do I weave in my ends before or after blocking? There are a few different philosophies here. Some knitters weave in ends before blocking, so the tails take on the shape of the stitches as the fabric relaxes. Others prefer to block first and then weave, so they're matching the final fabric and avoiding any puckering if the piece grows. Since we're just learning now, you don't need to choose a side yet. Just know that both approaches are used, and for now, your main goal is to learn the weaving motion and secure your tails neatly, so your knitting looks clean and finished. Practice the technique first, because that doesn't change whether you do it before or after blocking. Alright, that's weaving in your ends, following the stitch pattern so your tails disappear into the fabric and your piece looks as clean on the back as it does on the front. In the next video, we'll learn how to block our garment